Welcome to Illuminati Silver. We tell you the truth about silver. Today is Sunday the 5th of March 2023. And last week we saw gold and silver prices rise and the dollar value fall. Not by much, but bearing in mind there was very little economic data last week that should have affected markets, it was interesting to see the rise. However, this coming week, and certainly the week after, will be quite pivotal for gold and silver prices for the weeks ahead. Why? Let's take a look. Okay, before we get down to prices, just a quick reminder that links to our gold and silver 2023 forecast, which we publish at the start of the year, is placed in the description box below. Now, meanwhile, gold rose $44 last week, moving from $18.11 to $18.55. Having been as high as $18.57, so it closed just $2 off its week's high, and a low of $18.06, a rise of 2.4%. In sterling terms, it was up £24 at £1,541, and in euros it was up €28 at €1,746. Silver rose 49 cents. Rising from $20.78 to $21.26, having been as high as $21.29, so it actually closed 3 cents off its week's high, and a low of $20.45, a rise of 2.3%. Interestingly, both gold and silver had higher highs last week, but lower lows than the week before. In sterling terms, it closed at £17.68, that's up 27 pence, and in euros it was up 0.30 euros, which is 20.02 euros. The gold to silver ratio rose ever so slightly from 87.2 to 1 to 87.3 to 1. Now the difference between gold's high and low was $51, and the difference between silver's high and low was 84 cents. Moderate difference, not significant. Now we predicted last week that we foresaw gold trading between $17.50 and $18.75, which it did, and we envisaged silver trading between $20.25 and $21.75, which it did. Now, before we delve deeper into what happened last week, let's take a look at other financials. Bitcoin stands at $22,355. That's down $635 on the week. The main reason being the announcement by Silvergate that it may not necessarily be quite as solvent as people thought it is or should be. Equities were higher for the week, with the Dow Jones closing on Friday up 573 points at 33,390. The S&P up 75 points at 4,045, and the Nasdaq Composite up 295 points at 11,689. Also higher were oils, with Brent crude up $2.67 at 85.83 and WTI crude up $3.36 at $79.68. The one thing that wasn't up was the dollar index. That was in fact down 0.69 points on the week at 104.52, and we will probably see it hovering now between 103 and 106 over the next 2 weeks. Economic data for last week was a little mixed, with consumer confidence down for February to 102.9 compared with an expectation of 108.5. And manufacturing and services PMIs were broadly as expected, or perhaps very marginally higher. This coming week, though, will be extremely important as we have factory orders on Monday. Then Fed Chair Jerome Powell testifying to the Senate on Tuesday and then to the House on Wednesday. Watch out for that. He might give some tidbits away. We also have the ADP employment report on Wednesday and the all-important non-farm payroll on Friday, plus the unemployment rate. Now, in January, markets were surprised by a positive report of 517,000 new jobs. Be interesting to see if that's scaled back a bit in its revision. And it's now expecting 225,000 jobs for February. This report, if it deviates from those sorts of expectations, could indeed have quite an effect on the dollar and therefore precious metal prices. Now, the following week's announcement of the CPI figures, which is going to be announced on the 14th of March, will then have a determining effect on what the FOMC will do with regard to interest rates the following week. So watch out for the non-farm payrolls this week and then next week's CPI data. Now, we're not too excited either way about how gold and silver performed this last week. Why? Because essentially it's had quite a few weeks of falls. It was natural there'd be a slight rebound at some point, and of course it's during that sort of period where there's not an awful amount of economic data being announced. With both of them moving within our expected ranges, we weren't that surprised or excited. Now, to the upside, we have gold, perhaps looking at and hoping its destiny will be $1,900, and towards the downside we have $1,800. Now, of course, it can go slightly higher or slightly lower, but really that's where we envisage gold is going to trade between. For silver, we can see it now trying to aspire to $22 before any bad news comes out, and to the downside, $20. It's resting currently just above halfway. Now, the one thing we are looking at particularly, in addition to this economic news, is the geopolitical news concerning whether China will help Russia with arms and the knock-on effect that could have if they decide to do so, particularly with the threat of trade sanctions or embargoes or tariffs potentially being imposed upon them if they do. And that will obviously have a knock-on effect for the global economy. So we're expecting a little more excitement this coming week, and a lot more the week after. So where do we see these precious metals heading next week? Well, that said, we're maintaining our forecast for gold between 1800 and 1900, with 1775 towards the lowest end and 1925 towards the highest end as outliers. We see silver trading between $20.25 and $22 for the main part, with 1950 to 22.25 as outliers. There is the potential for a little more growth. We don't think it's going to be substantial though until we hear more about interest rates. And we've placed links, just as a reminder, to our gold and silver price forecast in the description box below. What do you think is going to happen to gold and silver prices? Do you see some major move in either direction? The pumpers have been out in force, absolute force, these past couple of weeks. In fact, I've never seen so many videos, well, not quite true, but for a long time, certainly, not seen so many videos telling us how silver is about to explode. Sorry, it's not going to. Not yet, anyway. Thank you for listening. Please give us a thumbs up, subscribe, press the bell sign. Have a great, safe, enjoyable weekend. And as always, a prosperous week ahead. Illuminati silver owners come from a background of banking, international wealth management and economics. Having now retired from these worlds, we are not qualified to give investment advice. Therefore, this and other productions must not be deemed to be giving such advice and merely represent the personal views of its owners.